What kind of tenant are you looking for your property? Is it a house, townhome, condo, apartment, office building, industrial property? Well, depending on the tenant we're looking for, our requirements may change a little bit. The requirements of a business are going to be different than the requirements of a person. So have you sat down? Do you have an application? Many owners will meet somebody at the property, have a nice informal conversation, and that's how they make their judgment. Sometimes that works very well. And then sometimes you get that bad tenant that you wish you did not take. But how can you avoid the bad tenant? Well, a lot of those tenants go to owners direct because they know they would be found out if they went to a property manager. So what is it we are looking for when a tenant applies for us? How are we able to weed through and find a good applicant? And why are we doing all of this? Well, let's take a moment. Let's talk about a couple things that we look at for our application. But before we do that, what's on the application? We have an application that is uniform and consistent for all of our applicants. It lists what's needed. It talks about our process. It talks about what would be a disqualification. So it is all known up front and shows we have a standard policy. Once we get that application, what are we looking for? Well, we have 12 points that we look for in an applicant. And we hope many of these come back with no results. But we still have to check. So what are those? Again, we have 12. So number one, we want to find out before we even meet the tenant, are they even qualified for the property? If they don't qualify for the property, there's no reason to meet them. Once we receive the application, we're going to look at their income. Our requirement on a residential property is 3 times the amount of the monthly rent. Do they make enough money to live in the property? Second, we're looking at their employment. They need employment to have income. Are they still working for the company? Have they worked there for a length of time, or did they just start yesterday? It's very important. As we look at the credit profile, this gives us a gauge at how someone has paid their bills in the past to give us some insight on how they're going to pay their bills in the future. Ideally, the property. Have they been evicted? In the state of Florida, an eviction happens because they refuse to vacate. Not initially because they didn't pay rent, but they didn't pay rent and they refused to vacate. Or even worse, they didn't follow the lease and they had to be evicted for non-compliance. Is that the person you want on your property that went through that process? When we reach out to a previous landlord, maybe the first one gives us a glowing reference because they want to get rid of them. What about the previous landlord? Now, sometimes, no, we can't find everything. But if we can, have we talked to them? When we're doing our search for public records, we can see if a person is a sex offender and how we may need to deal with that. When we're looking in these public records, what other things can we find? As we look at criminal activity, do they have a record? What is the record? Are those items we can hold against the tenants? Or is it just information that we have? Are they in bankruptcy? Have they filed bankruptcy? What type of bankruptcy? Do they have anything in collections? Maybe they were never evicted, but you see something on their report that looks like a rental property and it's in collections. Does that mean they owed money when they left? Probably. Is it worth looking into? Yeah. And pets. Everybody loves pets. Do they have a pet? Is it on the application? Do you know about it? What about the previous property? Did they have a pet for 10 years at the previous property, but on their application, I don't have any pets? Might that be worth investigating? Is that a problem? When we take all of these factors together, the purpose of an application is to get a profile of the person. We do not know our applicant today, but this is the person that is moving into our property. We have to look at the past to be able to see what we can expect in the future, and it needs to be consistent. So what does your application look like? What are you checking on your applicant? And are they going to be a good fit for your property? My name is Baron McWright with Northeast Florida Realty. If you have concerns, or maybe you've had problems, let's talk about your process. Maybe it's fantastic. Maybe it could be tweaked a little bit, or maybe you need one. We can put one in place regardless, so that you don't have to worry about the application process of your next tenant.